Hi there, David Dow here of Kids Curriculums, and I just want to talk to you guys today about rotating curriculums. You may, those who are definitely in like the combat sports space, may not have heard of rotating curriculum. The quote unquote traditional martial arts, um, karate, taekwondo, etc., those martial arts and those karate spaces have probably heard of it. So what a rotating curriculum is a system designed to organize schools' curriculum in a way that the curriculum is not tied to certain belts or ranks, but is grouped inside phases, levels, or different programs. So what that means is that I want to use belt examples, but I know Muay Thai schools don't technically have belts. But for your kids' curriculum, you do need to create some sort of level. Like you could do projabs, which I don't really recommend for kids. T-shirts are the easy way to do it. Or if you really want to break with tradition, you can use the belt system. Now, I know a lot of Muay Thai crews and that would scream at that idea. And I'm not saying you should ever do that for adults. But for kids, they need to have a ranking system. But even if you don't, a rotating curriculum is a way of dividing up that curriculum so it's easier to teach. So if you have a class, I'm going to use the concept of belts just so that it's easier to explain. If you have a class of beginners, let's say white, yellow, and orange belt, before rotating curriculums came around, you would do whatever your warm-ups were, but then when it came time to teach whatever they needed to work on, we'll use a judo type example. You might have the white belts working on their break falls, the yellow belts working on also the guard outside reap. And I know since this is for Muay Thai schools, this you might not know all these techniques, but and then you might have the orange belt working on a foot sweep, ashibarai. So you'd have to break up the class and might even have some, for different instruction. You might either need more instructors to take each group to teach them, or you have kids sitting around while you're teaching material not to other kids. And that makes classes boring. And it makes it more things that the instructor has to juggle. So the idea of rotating curriculum is you create, for instance, levels, beginner, intermediate, advanced. And I know that some people break up their classes in schools that way. And if you have just all skill levels together, it can create a real difficulty. Now, the curriculums I teach and obviously sell are more age-based. Now, there are skill levels within those ages. So you can, you still break up by skill level, beginner, intermediate, advanced. So even if you had a class of like 10 to 14-year-olds as an example, in that you would either have different classes for beginner, intermediate, advanced, or you would only have to break up your class into those 3 stages. So as opposed to having to, which let's say using the belt example, or like the Muay Thai program I taught, we use T-shirts. You'd have, that would be, instead of just 3 different levels in a class, that would be 9 different levels in a class. And that can be really difficult because that's a lot of things to teach in a class. Now, if you have the space and or time, you could potentially teach 9 different classes instead, but that's really difficult. The only other option you have would be to teach everybody the same thing, which some martial arts schools, especially Muay Thai gyms, might work on. Like, doesn't matter what level you are, everybody's working on jab cross combo, or you're working on box footwork or shielding or whatever. And given, I don't care what level you are, you might need to work on that. Better classes, you have each group working on what they need to work on. And that's the rotating curriculum. Because otherwise, advanced students get bored on if everybody's working on the same thing. But if you cater to the advanced students, you lose the beginners that are lost. And there's some, I've been at BJJ schools where or even when I started judo in a school that's been there since 1939, um, you can be lost at the very beginning. Now, given I've done martial arts for decades, so even though I was kind of lost because I didn't know the judo techniques and the way they were teaching them, um, I was able to grasp just because of my experience with teaching and studying martial arts. But the average beginner would have been totally lost. So by doing a rotating curriculum, let's say as an example, let's take a real beginner curriculum that makes it really easy. You want your beginners working on jab, let's do the white, yellow, and orange example, sorry, in your beginner class. So, once again, those could be t-shirts, prajads, whatever. Just within a ranking system, or if you want to break up into just names and not have any little ranks, you can do this as well. You don't have to have a ranking system to have a rotating curriculum. So you're having your white level do jabs, yellow level do jab cross, and your orange level do jab cross hook. Okay, as an example, you're working on that combination. So given, first you could go through all the different punches as a warm up, and then you have your beginners work just the jab, then the white level, then you go into the next level, they work their combo, and then the next level work their combo. So, and once again, if you were to sorry, I got lost for a minute. I had a little bit of camera problem here. So, if you were to not do this very well, kids will get lost. Okay, you have to make sure curriculums are fun, but so you want to be teaching as few different curricula at the same time as you can. You can teach much more students on a larger teacher-student ratio, have more different levels in a class. That's why you want to have a rotating curriculum. So, for instance, with those different levels I stated, for those different ranks, you'd be teaching 3 different things. So each group is going to have to weight some part. Given you can have the more advanced students working jabs, while the lower 2 levels are working jabs. And just as you get to them, you add on while the other 2 ones are working still the simpler ones. But the better way is you have a whole group, all the beginners, working on the same thing. As long like you'd have everybody working on the jab or the shield or whatever the technique was. If you were doing like Budo Taijutsu, you'd have them do a Ukitsuki block, for example. But you have them all working on the same thing in the same class. That way, time isn't divided in instruction. You can teach more students in the teacher-to-student ratio. But once again, repetition is the mother skill. So these kids get to work on that thing more of the time. And you can create, which is really important in any curriculum, hiding repetition. My problem with some of the development-based stuff I'd worked on in the past, I don't think there was enough repetition of certain skills. And so when you have a rotating curriculum, you can make sure you are everybody's working on the same thing. And you can do different more drills that are game-like, but are working on the same thing. So if you're having 3 to 9 different things that they need to work on, it makes it harder to create drills that everybody's working on. Or if you're doing pad work, things like that, you have to really segregate your classes or like have more instructors in there for each group. When they're all working on the same thing, level specific. So that's why you break your curriculum into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So that like when you're teaching all the beginners, they're all working the same thing. Your intermediate teaching all the same advanced. So now if you didn't have a rank system and previously, it's not as hard, but those who have like belt systems or rank systems, they're used to teaching all the white levels one thing, all the yellow levels one thing, orange level another thing. And the idea of mixing that order up seems confusing. And what I mean by this, for instance, like where I use the jab cross hook example. Actually, we'll do the a double jab, not just jab, because jab would be like working on base techniques that you have to learn that before you can learn anything, but just combinations, right? So it doesn't matter whether you learn a jab cross first or a cross hook first or a hook uppercut first. Given you could argue the hook uppercut's a little bit more difficult, but not that much more. I mean, you might want to put the hook uppercut in the intermediate level, depending on how spread out your curriculum is for the kids. In ours, it's very specific and it's based on different developmental level, what different kids can do at different age groups, and you'd be, unlike most kids programs that are watered down for kids, kids can actually do some amazing things. If you look at the Olympics, how young Olympic athletes are, or if you look at Muay Thai kids in Thailand, some of the things they can do are amazing. Given in Thailand, the thing is, they're training 7 days a week because they live at the camp. So they're getting massive amounts of repetition, and the crew and the Anjin don't really care if the kids want to do it or not. They have to do it. Whereas for people in America, kids in America, this is a hobby. There's no kids fighting professionally, at least legally. So you want to make sure that the curriculum is engaging and you are getting the skill set they need. And a rotating curriculum will do that for you. Where each level is working on the same thing rather than each rank, which can get, if you get a big enough class, that can get really overwhelming really fast. And if you've taught kids, trying to have some sit while other ones are working at things, that's a nightmare. One, you get more of the kids going home to mom and dad and saying, this is boring, I'm just sitting around. And we don't want that. So by doing a rotating curriculum, you keep the kids engaged. You're able to have less plates spinning here. Everybody's working on the same thing in each class. And you are making sure that they get the proper repetition in each of the skills. So this was a little bit rambly, but I hope I got the information in. If you have any questions on rotating curriculum, hit me up in the direct message or in the comments below. And if you're interested in our martial art kids programs that are based on developmental understanding of age groups, hit me up.